Good morning, everyone. My name is Terry Goldberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Northeast Waste Management Officials Association, or NWMOA, and I want to welcome you to this morning's webinar on EPA's Lean Management System. I'm going to give it another minute or so before we actually get underway with the presentation to let more people join us, because I can see that people are joining us at this point. So just hold on a minute or so, and then we'll get underway with the presentation. Good morning, everyone, again. My name is Terry Goldberg. I'm the Executive Director of NWMOA, and I want to welcome you to this morning's webinar on EPA's Lean Management System. Before we get underway, I just want to make sure all of you are familiar with the functions on the GoToWebinar panel. You can see there's a control panel on your screen, and you should be able to see in that control panel the bar that says questions. And so throughout the presentation, Linda and I really encourage you to post your questions, and I will moderate the questions at the end of the presentation. So don't hesitate to post questions or comments or your thoughts as Linda's talking, and we'll go through and try to have a discussion. We're trying to make sure to have about a half an hour at the end for some questions and discussions, and if we can and people's computers allow it, we can unmute people and have some exchange. Also on your control panel, you'll see the chat bar. If you have any problems with audio or other functions in GoToWebinar, you can send me a message through the chat feature. Again, for each of these features, if you want to use them, you click on the little square with the dash through it, and that will enlarge that bar, and then you can type in your message or your question that way. We are recording this morning's webinar, and we will be posting the recording and Linda's slides on our website as soon as we can, probably in the next few weeks, and we'll let all the registrants know where to find the recording and the slides on NWMOA's website at that time. So I just want to introduce our presenter for this morning. It's a longtime colleague of mine, so it's a lot of fun to be working with her on this. I think Linda and I have worked together in something like more than 20 years. So Linda Darvo has been a member of the EPA State Lean Work Group sponsored by NWMOA since it began 8 years ago. She has facilitated Lean Kaizen events at EPA Region 1 and nationally, and is now one of the key champions implementing the EPA Lean Management System, or ELMS, the most recent stop on the EPA Lean journey. This presentation will cover the basic concepts and implementation of the EPA Lean Management System, as well as EPA Region 1's transition to a virtual system in response to COVID-19. I'm going to hand it over to Linda. Thank you, Linda.
All right, thanks so much, Terry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So Terry, I really want to thank you for organizing our state EPA Lean Work Group for so many years. You've been a great champion at that. And it's really given us a chance to communicate and learn from each other. You know, EPA has always been way behind the states as far as implementing Lean, so I've learned so much from my state colleagues. I thank you all, and I really appreciate you all being here today. So one of my goals today is to leave a lot of time at the end for questions and discussion. I'm really interested to hear what you all think about our Lean management system. And, you know, we've tried to do this webinar for a while now. We tried to get it going in March, but then COVID happened, so we put it off. But it's actually kind of good because now we've got this extra piece that we can talk about in how the system helped us to deal with the pandemic. So I will start my slides. Oops, they're not moving. My slides aren't moving, Terry.
Linda, if you right-click on your mouse and hit next, it might get it going. You have to have your, there it is. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the agenda, thanks so much. The agenda today, I was trying to use the arrows, and I guess I need to use the mouse. So the agenda today is I'm just going to do like a overview of ELMS, and then talk about the difference between ELMS and Lean, and then the basic components of ELMS, and then our adaptation to telework because of COVID. I'm having trouble again, Terry. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll get this eventually. So the objectives are for everyone to understand what ELMS is, the benefits that we've seen of ELMS, the connection between Lean and ELMS, which is super important, and then the how we've deployed ELMS in Region 1. Just a few terms that we use that I know most of you are really familiar with. We talk a lot about Gemba walks. You know, in Lean, a Gemba walk is going to see the process. When we talk about Gemba walk, we talk about going to see the project, the process flow board and performance board that we'll talk about a little bit. And we look for 3 things when we do a Gemba walk with ELMS. We look for schedule, is all the work on the board and scheduled to be done? Better, is there something that we're trying to get better at? And then action, is there action going on? And there are things on the action registry of people doing work to make things better. We talk a lot about the fishbone diagram and the 5 whys. Problem solving is a big piece of our system. A3 is another problem solving tool that we talk a lot about. All of our senior executives are required to do an A3 project every year, and those are usually tied to a lean management project. And then Kaizen events that I'm sure a lot of you have facilitated. Those are your typical lean events, a 3 to 5 day event. And I'll talk a little bit about how the lean management system differs from doing a Kaizen event. So ELMS is a system that uses lean principles and tools, but pairs them with some extra pieces, the routine monitoring, the measurement, and the employee engagement to identify problems and solve them and sustain improvements. These are all the pieces of the lean management system. We start out by trying to standardize our process. We have cascading performance measurements that ties the staff level work with our agency goals. We have problem solving for any issues that come up during the implementation of our lean management system. We have business reviews, and huddles are an important piece of just the continuous improvement. And we have leader behaviors that are things that we expect our managers to do to keep this system going. So in a nutshell, ELMS, the goal of ELMS is to see problems fast, solve them, and sustain the improvements. It's not a Kaizen or Lean event, as we just discussed. It's not just a project, and it's not a gotcha. And I put in this wall of shame. We were doing a presentation to managers in Connecticut, and they asked me what was the biggest barrier in implementing ELMS. And I have to say, in my opinion, that it's this issue where people are afraid it's going to be a wall of shame. They're afraid to have their work put on display for everyone to see because they're afraid they're going to be shamed. And we know from our lean training, and this is where we kind of go back to our lean philosophy, that there's no such thing as a bad employee, there's only bad processes. So making our work visible really creates this kind of sense of teamwork, so we can all work on it together. And so the goal is not to just target certain employees or make people look bad, but really to create this sense of teamwork so we can all work together and get our work done. And it's not completely new. It depends on a lot of the pieces that a lot of us have used over the years in Lean. So the goals and benefits of ELMS, I'm going to talk about a little bit. Our goal was to deploy ELMS in 80% of EPA by September 2020. So we were hoping, and we're on track actually pretty much to get that accomplished. But we want 80% of the staff at EPA to be huddling around boards every week. So some of the benefits are the visual management. You can quickly see if work is on or off schedule. You can quickly identify and monitor progress. And developing and tracking measures. One of the issues that we've always had with Kaizen events is we don't really have any data. We don't have a lot of data when we go in to solve a problem. We don't typically collect data on how much time things take, how many things we do a year. We never had that kind of data. With ELMS, we are constantly collecting data. We're constantly collecting baseline data and then moving on from there. Every week we meet and we see how much work is getting done. So we're collecting all this data. So it really helps us to meet our goals. Engage in problem solving. We have a whole problem solving system that we use, so we don't just ignore problems. We really have a way to address them, which is something we didn't really have before. The other benefit is that we have these 15-minute weekly huddles, and this is a big piece of the Lean management system. Every process has a huddle every week. And to me, this has been the biggest surprise of Lean, of ELMS, is how much people have embraced these 15-minute weekly huddles. It's really been great to have these check-ins. There's been very little resistance. The attendance is usually great at the huddles. Everyone wants to be there. And they actually do save time in our regular staff meetings because we've already talked about the work. We've been talking about the work every week. So there's not a lot to talk about when we get together at staff meetings. And another big benefit that I see at EPA is these projects really break down silos. The teams that implement these projects are usually cross-functional and cross-divisional. Silos have always been a huge issue at EPA and probably in your organization as well, where the water people don't talk to the air people, who don't talk to the waste people, who don't talk to enforcement. We have all those people on the same team often, so it really does help to break down the silos. This is an example of a team, and you might recognize some of the people here, but we had, this was a team that worked on the PPA project, and we had someone from public affairs, we had someone from our tribal group, people from grants, people from water, people from air, and we had a brand new person as well. And another great benefit of ELMS is that when new people come in, they can see exactly what the process is and what needs to be done. It's all up there on the board. So especially with COVID, this has been really helpful because when we have new people, we're still hiring, but those people haven't even been to our office yet. So this way they can get with their team and they can see exactly what the work is that will be done. So Lean, as you know, is a set of principles and methods for identifying and eliminating waste. And this is a little map of the Lean journey at EPA. We started back in 2001 with this EPA Lean Manufacturing and the Environment Report. And this was really groundbreaking. I remember being at the Association of Manufacturing Excellence Conference when we rolled this out, and people loved it. A lot of people, even from really big companies, told me, we've been doing Lean for years, but we never thought about the environmental impact. We never thought to measure how much hazardous waste are we, not producing because we're doing Lean. How much chemical use are we saving? How much energy use are we saving? How much solid waste are we not generating? So that was a really kind of a groundbreaking thing. And then the states, of course, were using Lean. We started working with ECOS on encouraging the states to use Lean. In 2007, our first Lean event happened out in Region 7 in Kansas City. That was an event with EPA and the states. And at that time in Region 1, we got some money and we started sponsoring Lean events in small businesses. And we used it as a compliance assistance tool. Companies that were consistently out of compliance, we found that a lot of times their processes were just really bad and they just were struggling to get their product out the door, so that by doing Lean, that would help them, save them money, but also help them with their environmental footprint and give them more time to focus on their environmental responsibilities. In 2013, Gina McCarthy was our administrator, and she had come from the state of Connecticut, and she saw how successful Connecticut DEP was in doing Lean, and she wanted to do it at EPA. So she started our first Lean leader class, and we went back to the regions and started doing Kaizen events, and at headquarters started doing Kaizen events. Then in 2018, Henry Darwin came to our agency, and he came from the state of Arizona, and he had done this EPA Lean management system very successfully in Arizona, and he wanted the opportunity to do it at EPA. So we started working on this. We do have a support system at EPA, and a lot of this is kind of left over from our Lean days as well. We have the Office of Continuous Improvement, and they report directly to the administrator. They help us organize our champions. Each region has 10 or 12 champions who work with the teams, the process teams, and help them to get set up and help them with their huddles. We have a problem-solving core. Again, every region has 10 or 12 people who have been trained by headquarters to do problem solving. And then we have our Lean community practice that still meets every month. And this is a group that has been meeting for years. It's over 200 people, and we just get together every month and talk about Lean. And now we're integrating kind of Elms into that. So the connection between Lean and Elms, Lean is more project and tool based. When we were doing Kaizen events, we would work with the willing. Whoever wanted to do an event, we would do one. We weren't necessarily focused on things that were important or the most important or the most difficult. One of the things I hear from all of my state counterparts, and really everyone who does Lean, is the Lean Kaizen events can be really difficult to sustain. We've all probably been in these Kaizen events where they just go great, everyone's really excited. We come out of there with an implementation plan. Everyone, just praises the process and says, oh, this was so great. But then you have your 1 month check-in and like no one's done anything. And you're like, well, guys, I thought we all agreed to do this. And people are like, oh yeah, well, we didn't get to that. We didn't have time. So those plans can quickly fall apart. I think one of the reasons that happens is we were trained when we did Lean events, we were always trained to bring managers in at the end. They came in at the end of the day, they came in at the end of the event and got a presentation on what the team had done. And we were always told not to have managers in the event because then staff wouldn't feel free to really say what they thought. But I think that what happened is the managers didn't really have buy-in to the solutions. So the difference with Elms is we utilize a lot of the Lean tools and philosophy, but it provides this infrastructure for continuous improvement. We're checking in every week. We're working on this every week. And there's management responsibilities. The process owners for each of our projects is a manager. So they have a lot more responsibility in making sure that these projects are successful. So this is just some data from March 2020. I'm guessing it probably hasn't changed much because March is when we all went to telework. And we've had a couple of new teams in Region 1, but not many. We're not deploying at a really quick rate. We do have all the tools to do this virtually, but we've just recently developed them. And so we haven't done a lot virtually. So I'm guessing this probably hasn't changed much, but you can see in Region 1, we're at our 80% goal. We hit that in February. Some of the other regions are doing even better than that. Some of the headquarters offices are doing really well. And agency-wide, we're at about 60%. So what does our deployment look like? When we do this deployment, when we do a new team, what does that look like? This is basically the roadmap of the components that we train people in, and we have about a six to 8 hour training to set up these projects. We start with the SIPOC, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we go into our cascading performance measures, make sure that what we're measuring at the staff level lines up with our agency goals. We do our visual management piece, which is our performance board and our flow board. Our flow board is to track the process. The performance board is to encourage continuous improvement. And then we have our business reviews and huddles, which are our check-ins. You know, our huddles are every week, 15 minutes around the board. Our business review is an hour-long meeting we have every month with our senior leadership team. And then we do problem solving along the way, wherever we need it, wherever we come into problems, we set up a problem solving session. So the SIPOC, and this I think has been the most valuable piece of everything that we've done. The SIPOC stands for Supplier, Input, Process, Output, and Customer. And it's a high-level visual representation of the process, and we use it to provide standard work, a structured way to discuss the process. This is an example of a SIPOC, and I think the state of Massachusetts did this or something very similar with all of their processes. It's really eye-opening, and it's kind of amazing that we've been doing a lot of the work we've been doing for so many years, and for a lot of our processes, we've never done this. So with the SIPOC, you start with the process, and you decide where it's going to begin and where it's going to end. And it may be a large process, so you may not be able to look at the whole thing. We have one project that we did that was on Superfund Record of Decisions, which is a couple of year process, and it was really too big. So what you want to do is take something where you can see progress moving along at a fairly steady rate. So you decide where you're going to start and where you're going to end. And then for each line in the process, each step in the process, you decide, we have an acronym called Plants Come Out in Spring. So it's process, customers, outputs, inputs, and suppliers. And that's the best order to do this in. So we start with the process step, we go to our output, our customer, who the customer is, what is the output for that process step, what is the input, and who is the supplier. And we do this for each step of the process. And one of the tricks of using the SIPOC is that whoever the customer is for one step should be the supplier for the next step. And if they're not, then you're probably missing a step. So this takes a couple of hours usually because we have to go through every step. We have to think about it. A lot of information comes out. We find things like someone's putting information in a database and no one is ever using that information. Someone is writing a report that just goes and sits on a desk, because sometimes you have these things that were left over from previous administrations or previous managers, and people are still doing the work, but no one's really using it. So to really nail down the process steps and all these other, suppliers, inputs, outputs, customers, really takes a couple of hours, and it's hard work, but it's definitely worth it. So then after we have our SIPOC, we move on to our visual management piece. And this is, to make everything, to take all the work, out of our desks, off of our desks, and make it visual. The flow board is how to measure or to look at how the process works, and the performance board is to look at continuous improvement. So what is a flow board? And here's a picture of a flow board on a wall, and all of our flow boards actually probably still are, on the walls in our offices. We did this all by paper. And it's intended to provide visible indications of the flow and allow problem identification. So across the top, we have the basic steps of the process, the main steps of the process, and then we have how much time each step takes. This is a really difficult piece too, because we typically don't track time for all of our processes. And then we have our proxy cards, and I'll talk more about those in the future. And each of those represent a widget. You know, each of those will represent a grant or a permit or whatever this process is working on. And then we have our and-on area, or below the red line area. When things don't meet the goals, the timeline goals, or things that need management attention, we put them down here below the red line, so that when we huddle, we can talk about them and make sure that they get the attention that they need. So we call this a first generation flow board when we do the training, because you're constantly upgrading your flow board. You're constantly finding out that things change. You might not start out with the right process steps. You definitely will not start out with the right timelines. And all those things, you know, you're just constantly learning more about your process, and you're constantly changing it. So when we did this on paper, we encourage people not to get too fancy, you know, just use brown paper and stickies and markers, and don't get fancy because it's going to change. Now that we're doing everything electronic, it's a lot easier to make the changes. But the basic pieces of the flow board are the board title and the process owner, who is the manager of this process. And then the milestones, number 2 is the milestones. These are the really big steps of the process that you want to track. And underneath that is the time for each of these steps. And as I said, this is really tricky. It's difficult, and it takes a while to figure out exactly how much time these steps take. And this is going to change. You know, something that you thought was going to take a week might take a month. Something that you thought would take a month might take a day. And you figure that out as you're using the board. And then we have our proxy card, and this has all the information for the widget that's going through the process, and are behind schedule, things that are either behind schedule or need management attention. Sometimes things are behind schedule, but we know why, so they don't have to go below the red line. But things that might go below the red line are things that you need managers to make a phone call to get things moving, or you need to do problem solving, or you need help with them. And then we have a tick sheet, which is just a Excel spreadsheet that we use to track why things go behind the line, down below the red line. You know, why are they behind schedule? What are the causes? So we can track those and see if there's something common that makes things behind schedule all the time. And then we have our standard work, and that's just, you know, when are we going to huddle, what day and time, who's going to update the flow board. You know, if we're huddling on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, we want to make sure the flow board is updated by Tuesday, close of business. All those things go into your standard work. So the proxy card, as I talked about, is the critical information to track the progress of the output. And you want to include, you know, some unique identifier, so you know which grant, which permit you're talking about, any pertinent information, who's the point of contact for that particular widget, and then what the milestones are, the major process steps, what the target dates are, when you expect them to be due, and when the actual date is that they were actually done. So you can see how close your targets are to your actual dates. And if there's a big discrepancy between the target and the actual date, you know, you need to figure out, is there a problem, or did we just have the wrong target? Did it just take a lot longer than we thought it was going to, or a lot less time? So this is just to kind of track everything that's going on. So when we went to, you know, after COVID, when we went to doing all electronic boards, we didn't really have any guidance. So we wanted to get it done as quickly as possible. So people just used whatever they felt comfortable with. Some people used Excel, some people used PowerPoint. Microsoft has a tool called Planner, and we have an instruction manual to use Planner now. This came out recently from our Office of Continuous Improvement. If you're going to set up a new flow board, I do suggest you use Planner because it does have a lot of functionality that other things don't have. But you should use whatever you feel comfortable using. But if anyone wants this, I'm happy to download it and send it to you. It's on our intranet site. So the other piece of our visual management is our performance board. And this is the tool that you want to just be able to look at and see if this process is making improvement. The pieces of the performance board are your one thing to get better at. All the teams are constantly working on one thing, one piece of the process or something related to the process that they want to get better at and tracking that. And then you have the process owner who's the manager of that process, the meeting date and time. You usually stick your SIPOC up here. You have your metrics, and these are things that these are like the charts that show you one thing to get better at, and they can be something to do with the team. You might have a metric where you want everyone on the team to get a certain certification or certain expertise in something. They can be related to quality. And in our organization, that usually means rework. It usually means reducing the amount of rework that you're doing. And then we have service level metrics, which is usually time, something related to time, getting things done faster, getting reports done in 6 months, whatever time target you want to reach. And then we put down the agenda for our meetings, our huddles, roles and rules, who's going to be the facilitator. We try to swap facilitators every week. Everyone gets a turn at being the facilitator of the huddle. And then we have an attendance sheet, and we take attendance at our huddles only to see that if a big decision is made and someone's not there, we want to make sure that they are informed of it. It's not, not everyone can make every huddle every week, of course. And it's not a big deal if you miss a huddle, but just if the team makes a big decision, we want to make sure everybody hears about it. So the main part of the performance board is the improvement action registry. And this is kind of like notes from the huddle. When something comes up that needs to be done, we write it on the improvement action registry so that we keep track of it. And the next huddle, the first thing we do is go to the improvement action registry and see, did people do what they said they were going to do? So we put down the assigned date, which is usually the day of the huddle, whatever the action is that needs to be done, who's going to be the owner of that action. It doesn't mean they're going to do it by themselves, but it means they're going to be responsible for getting it done. What's the due date? When was it completed? And then each time you huddle, you can kind of fill in how far along are you to completing that action. So it's really a great way to take notes during the huddle and write down things that need to be done. And they can be really simple things like we need a new attendance sheet, or they can be really complex things like we need to figure out a new metric to work on. The last thing we do at the end of every huddle is talk about celebrations. And this sounds kind of silly, but it's really actually very fun. Anything that people want to celebrate, and it can be personal things. Someone had a baby. At one of our huddles, we celebrated that someone got a new refrigerator. It can be anything people want to talk about. People are going on vacation. And then it can be milestones that you reach on your process as well. I'll show you some more examples of that as we go further into this. So now that we're virtual, we have an Excel spreadsheet that we use as a performance board, and that has different tabs that have all these pieces in it. And that's available if anyone needs that. I'd be happy to send it to you. So the next thing we talk about is cascading performance measures. We want to make sure that the things that we're measuring help us to reach our goals as an agency. And here's an example. We have a process level work unit where we have our flow board and our performance board, our weekly huddles. Those measurements from that roll up into this bowling chart. And this is something that we review every month in our region with our senior leadership. And these monthly business reviews roll up into the administrator's quarterly reviews. So everything is related. And for example, we have a board for FOIAs. We have a board for our team that works on getting FOIAs done on time. One of our bowling chart metrics is FOIA backlog. So we can make sure that we don't have a backlog of FOIAs and that we're addressing those in a timely manner. And then that measurement rolls up into our goal of increased transparency. We want to be transparent. We want to be answering people's FOIAs on time. Another example is our state implementation plans in our air division. We have a board for state implementation plans. And then on our bowling chart, we have a metric for backlog of state implementation plans. So we track how well we're doing in getting those approved. And then that rolls up into our goal of improved air quality. So hopefully, you know, all the work we do rolls up to help us to meet our strategic goals. Huddles, again, as I said, this has been a big surprise to me how much people really enjoy huddling. It's a chance to get together, especially now that we're all, you know, working at home. It's a chance to check in every week and see what's going on. Are we getting our work done? Are we meeting our metrics? Do we have any problems that we need to bring to management's attention? And then our business reviews are done every month, usually on a Tuesday morning. Our leadership team gets together and we review all the bowling chart metrics. So practically, how does it work? We have an agenda and we take attendance, and then we look at our action registry, and then we talk about any issues that are coming up. We look at our metrics. How are we doing? Are we meeting our goals? And then we have our celebrations, and it generally takes 15 minutes or less. At the beginning, it will take a lot longer, but once you get it down and start doing it every week, you can really easily get it down to 15 minutes. And then problem solving. If we find something that is going wrong that we don't know how to address right away in the huddle, we can pull together a problem solving team that's cross-functional, cross-divisional, and we can go through our problem solving steps of creating a problem statement, doing our 5 whys and fishbone diagram, and then coming up with an action plan to address the problem. Excuse me, I'm just taking a drink of water here. Okay, so I want to give you an example of how this system works together. And this is a big part of this, is that it's just a system. So this is our grant closeout flow board. Our grants office decided to do a flow board on the closeout process. The closeout process is a pain. Nobody likes it because it's basically just paperwork. By the time you get to the closeout portion of a grant, all the fun stuff has been done. So this is always a problem to get these things closed out on time. And we have national metrics that we have to meet. We have to have 90% of our grants closed out by the end of September. So when the grants people put up this flow board with all the steps that need to be taken to close out a grant, they found that there was a problem with the project officer certifications. And this is the certification that the project officer sends to the grants people and says, my grant is done. I've gotten my final report. The money's been spent. I'm all done. These are supposed to come in 3 months after the close of the grant. And they were always coming in late, so they couldn't close out the grants. So they held a problem-solving exercise to try and mitigate that problem. And they pulled together project officers from all over the region and set up a little team-solving exercise. You can see here, they did what we call a 4 square, which is they set up their problem statement, what their goal was, and what the scope of this problem was. And they came up with an improvement action registry of all the things that they were going to do to try and get those closeout, those certifications in on time so they can close out their grants on time and meet their national metric. Now, all of our senior executives have to do an A3 project. So the executive who is in charge of grants did his A3 project on the closeout certifications. So on this issue that the grants team, identified, I somehow got ahead of myself here. Let me get back to the right slide. Sorry about that. Okay, so all of our senior executives have to do an A3 project. So the senior executive in charge of grants decided to do his on this closeout certification. And what really needed to happen, and I think, and those of you who do Kaizen events can let me know if you agree with this or not, but in every Kaizen event I've ever done, we always have to put in a communication step. Communication is always a problem. And that's what was happening with these PO certs. The project officers were not getting communication about the fact that they had to get these certifications in for 5 or 6 months before they would due. There was no communication after, they would be told 5 or 6 months before they would due that they were going to be due, and then there was no communication until they were late. So having the senior manager involved and having him send out emails made people really pay attention and understand that they needed to get these certifications in. And it was very effective. Part of the A3 is the results box, number 4. And you can see there's a little graph there. And in March of FY19, they had 33 certifications still due. And then in March of FY20, they only had 7 due. So they had about an 80% improvement in getting these PO certs in on time. And you can see the improvement action registry. These were all the things that the grants folks did to try and make this happen. And what they came up with was a new process that they're going to now do every year, where they start sending out these emails and start reminding folks that they need to get these PO certifications in. And they also put up like a big board on the wall to track when they were coming in. So just that extra attention and communication really solved that problem. But it all stemmed from the Elms project of setting up that flow board and identifying that that's where the problem was, that's where the holdup was. So there's all these steps that they could then take to solve that. So again, this is on the wall. We had our Elms, this was part of our Lean Management Champions group flow board. We decided our metric was to get all of our processes to improve by 25%. All of our Elms projects to have one project improvement that was 25%. And all these little guys that are runners are our Elms projects. Those are how many projects we have. And people, when we did this on the wall, it was kind of fun because people got really creative with different things like this. One group had like a space theme, and they did different stuff like that. Now that we're electronic, we don't really do that anymore. But it's also, I think, being electronic is also a lot more effective. So then COVID happened, and we decided to go to using Microsoft Teams for all of our projects. And we all had Microsoft Teams on our computers. It wasn't rolled out yet. Our fabulous IT department, I'm sure had this great plan of rolling it out. They were going to roll it out in September and probably do all kinds of training and everything, but we needed it right away. So we went on YouTube and we talked to the other regions and we got ourselves trained and we figured out how to use it. This is the Elms Champions team now. As you can see, we have our flow board and our performance board. In the files, you go to our Elms Champions, the general file, the general channel, and then look in files. We have Elms processes improved, and then our flow board, and then our performance board. So Cheryl Bosner, who was our champion, set up this flow board in PowerPoint. And these are all the process teams that we have in Region 1. Everyone's got their own little button here. We have brownfield success stories, training forms, tribal work plans, all these are all different processes that we are tracking. So the goal of the Elms champions was to move these along this flow board to get them to have 2 metrics that they improved by 25%. So we had, these are the teams that are still tracking their first metric. Then we have the teams that got a 25% improvement in their first metric. And then they get 2 weeks to decide on their second metric. And then these are the teams that are working on their second metric. And these are the teams that have achieved 25% improvement on their second metric. And you can see below the line here are the teams that need management attention. They might be people who want to sunset their teams. Sometimes teams are done with their work and they want to close up shop. And we let them do that as long as they replace it with a new process. But these are the teams that are working on sunsetting and working on figuring out what their new process is going to be. So each of those buttons, when you click on them, you get a proxy card for each team. And this is the Elms deployment proxy card. And you can see we have our first metric, which we started back when we first deployed. We wanted everybody to be confident in training, in doing the training and training new teams. And we met that goal. We got 12 out of 18 of our champions confident by our target date. So we had about a 75% improvement. So then our second metric, as I said, is to get teams to move to the second metric and make a 25% improvement. We put on there, because of COVID, we put on when we got our electronic flow board completed, when our electronic performance board is completed, so we have that information for every process. And we also put on when Deb and Dennis attended our huddle. And Deb is our DRA and Dennis is our RA, and they're trying to get to a huddle for every single process. And this has been really, great for the teams to be able to present their information in front of Deb and Dennis and get that kind of boost and that attention. People really, really like that. So again, that's like management participation in keeping the lean management system going. So here's an example of, I'm just going to do one more example. This is a Superfund flow board and performance board. This is what it looked like on the wall. So Superfund billing, I see a typo there, but Superfund billing is a really important process because we've got to get money in to keep our Superfund program going. And this was a great team because it brought together the finance people and the Superfund people to talk together, and they really found out like a lot of things that they could work together and improve just by being on the same team. It was really exciting. It's also a national metric. It's a national team. One of the managers at headquarters is doing an A3 project on this. So it's pretty important. But this is what it looked like. We would huddle around this every week, and then COVID. And so this is what it looks like now. We have a team, Superfund billing. And if you go into the general channel and then files, this is what you'll see. You'll see their performance board, their what they call their metrics tracker. It's their flow board. And then just a lot of other information that they want to keep handy. So this is what the flow board looks like. This is the site, their anniversary date, the bill due date, and these are the major milestones in the process. They have to create this letter, they have to have case team review, and they have to then adjust the final package and letter and get it out the door. They have 100 days to do this. And they found out that one of we usually met the 100-day metric, but one of the sticking points was the case team review, because people on the case team didn't realize they only had 30 days to do their review. So we did a lot of communication around that piece, and we started tracking and measuring how long these case team reviews took. And this is the proxy card for each site. Each site gets its own proxy card. We have the milestones down here on the left, and then the metric, how many days they have to meet it, and then the target, and then the metric target. So we're kind of, because this is a national program and we have 100 days under the national program, we're kind of keeping two sets of books. We kind of have the national program target and then our own target. And then we have the actual date that things are due. And this is the performance board for the Superfund billing project. You can see we keep track of all the sites, how many days the case review team took to process that bill, and our target is 30 days. And you can see, you know, we track, like, did we meet that 30-day metric? And so you can just look at this board and you can tell, how are we doing? How's this team doing? The first site that we tracked, we were way over the 30 days, but this was when we had just gone to telework and things got lost and mixed up, and that was kind of the reason why that happened. After that, we've been pretty steadily being well below the target. But you can see down the bottom, this is an Excel spreadsheet, and each tab has, you know, this is the tab for title and attendance. We have the metrics tab that we're looking at right now. Then we have our issues and tick sheet, celebration, roles and rules. These are all different tabs on this Excel spreadsheet for our performance board. This is the action registry for Superfund billing. When we have our huddles and something comes up that we want to fill it in, that we want to make sure it gets done, we put it on this. And you know, you can see some of them are, you know, continue to update the proxy cards, update the remote performance board. Some things are a little bit more process oriented, like revise the template for a billing letter. So it can be all different kinds of things, but we put them here and then we check in and make sure, when we have our huddle, we check in and make sure that they're getting done. And this is the celebrations piece that I talked about. This is always at the end of our huddles. We talk about just anything we want, and we have a lot of fun with this. It ends the huddle on a really upbeat note and a fun note. You can see some of these were like, we completed the performance board, we hosted some managers at the huddle, and some of them are, you know, we ended the first virtual huddle on time. It took us a while to get the hang of the virtual huddles. You know, we did some things for the process. We hosted Deb and Dennis at the huddle. We actually hosted Vince Pirelli from New Hampshire DES at this huddle, and we put that on for our celebrations. Last week when we were huddling, we started talking about how long we'd been at EPA, and we found out we had over 200 years of experience on this team, so we put that down. So we had a lot of laughs over that. So it's just a really positive way to end the huddle. Almost an hour, so I'm almost done here. I just wanted to show you, this is our intranet site. This is where our Office of Continuous Improvement keeps all of the materials, and we can access this and show you around if anyone's interested. But all of our training, success stories, deployments, all of our information is kept on this SharePoint site. So we can, you know, it's an internal EPA site, but we can always help you to, if anyone in the States is interested in looking at this and looking at our training materials and or anything, we can help you to do that. And I wanted to say, so this is my email. You all know where to find me. Cheryl Rosner, who is our official ELMS coordinator for the region, is also on the line, and she's always available to help anyone with questions or deployments or anything that you want to talk about. And Terry, that was all I had for slides. If we want to go to discussion or questions.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was great. Really good review. We're getting some questions and comments. Before I read some of them, I wanted to let folks know that if you want to say something, you can raise your hand electronically. If you look at the attendees panel, if you click on the box and you blow it up, you'll see there's sort of in the middle of the third row, there's a little hand symbol. If you click on that, it will show up, and you can then, I will hopefully monitor this and call on you. Somebody has been having their hand up for a while, Eric Beck. So I'm going to try to unmute you, Eric, and see if you have something you want to share. Eric, you have to unmute yourself. Eric, do you want to say something? Because you had your hand up. Okay. Maybe he doesn't have a control. Maybe he's got stepped away. I'll try to get back to him in a little while. But one comment we got is from Amy Gulford. I would love to have a copy of the planner instructions document. I've been trying to set those up for myself and use with other staff. Linda, do you want to comment on that at all?
Sure. What can I get that to you, Terry, and you can distribute it, or what's the best way to do that?
Sure, that's something we can do. Is it online anywhere we can send out a link, or?
It's on our intranet site, so I don't think people outside EPA can access it, but I'm happy to download it and send it to anyone.
Okay, well, if you send it to me, I'll include it with an email to the registrants for this webinar.
Okay, that sounds good.
Remind folks that I will be posting a recording of this webinar as well as Linda's slides, and it probably isn't a good idea for me to post some of these other documents, but Linda, you let me know what's things we could post and things we shouldn't. And just,
yeah, I think we can post the planner document. You know, there's nothing proprietary in there. It's just on our intranet site, so it's not available. You know, people just can't access that.
Okay. Okay, from Nicole Lugley, she says, yes, please share the Microsoft instruction manual for the electronic boards for everyone. This will be very helpful. Thanks so much. Your presentation is terrific and beneficial. Best, Nicole. I don't know if you have any comments about that.
Oh, thanks, Nicole. I am not worthy. You know, DEP, Connecticut DEP was one of the real leaders in Lean, and I appreciate everything I've been able to learn from you over the years, so thank you.
Okay. Comment or question from Camille Fontanella. She says, are the flow board and performance board used for one single process, task, or a group of tasks performed by one team?
Yeah, so it's usually a process. I mean, you can do whatever makes sense, but usually it's a process. Like, for example, one of the teams that I work with is the training forms team. So all of the training forms that we processing training forms at EPA is like a 16-day multi-step process. It's very complex. It has to go from the manager to HR to finance, and then it has to go, you know, we have to pay for it, and then we have to go back. It's just like, it's kind of a mess. But anyways, so every training form is basically a proxy card, and we put that training form through the process and make sure it goes to every single step. So it's usually every flow board and performance board is a process. You can have multiple flow boards connected to one performance board. Sometimes we see that. We haven't done that a lot in Region 1, but if a manager has 2 or 3 processes maybe that have their own flow boards, he or she can put those all on one performance board and have all the information on one performance board. That's commonly done.
Thanks, Linda. I'm going to try to unmute Camille to see if she has any follow-up questions. Camille, okay. You're unmuted.
Hi, no, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Camille. Okay, I'm going to see if Eric, who has had his hand raised, can unmute himself and ask whatever his question or make his comment. Eric Beck. you have to unmute yourself if you want to say something. You have your hand raised. Okay, I guess that's not working.
Well, Eric's an EPA employee, so Eric, just call me anytime. We can talk.
Okay, he's got his hand up again. Eric, I unmuted you. Go ahead. You want to say something? You've got to unmute yourself. All right, whatever. Our next question is from Amy Gulford. For updating the visual board for the Huddle, who makes the updates and when? Staff doing the detail work as they complete it?
You know what? It depends on what the team decides. Usually it is each staff person, like with training forms, each person who is processing a training form will update the board. With Superfund billing, we have one person who is in position to see all the bills, and he's also kind of the national contact, so he updates the board every week. So it can vary, whatever makes sense to the team. Usually everybody updates their own work, but you could have just one person in charge of updating it.
So I'm going to unmute Amy and see if she has any follow-up questions. Amy, you have to unmute yourself if you want to say anything. Amy Gulford. Okay. Go ahead, Amy.
No other questions, thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Okay. Next question's from Catherine Bartone. Are the slides going to be shared? This is so impressive. Yes, the slides will be shared. We will post them on NMOA's website, and I will send out a link to the NMOA's, where it is on NMOA's website, to all the people who have registered for this webinar. And I don't know how quickly we'll be able to do that, given particularly this time of year and some of my staff's on vacation and that kind of thing. But it's as soon as it's available online, I'll let everyone know. We have a question two questions from Paz Terrio Berjana. How do you get operations engagement to identify problems?
Yeah, that's a good question. We started, and actually Cheryl knows more about this than I do because she was there at the very beginning of Elms. But we started by requesting that all of the divisions came up with at least one process. When we did our original deployment, headquarters came to our region and deployed 12 teams. So the managers, the division directors, were in charge of suggesting which teams those should be. And then from there, I think we've just gone with, whoever wants to do it, whoever wants to set up a process, a flow board and a performance board. We haven't really had to ask for, I don't think we've really asked for, for people to come forward. We've just kind of made it available. And as managers decide they want to do it, we've trained them.
I will try to unmute Cheryl and see if she wants to add anything. Cheryl, I've unmuted you. You're self-muted.
Oh, hi, Linda. First of all, that was fantastic. I felt like I learned stuff. We really had to work with the willing at the beginning. There was a lot of pushback from our managers on even implementing this system. And Deb Zaro, who is a big proponent, really asked each manager to come up with some processes that we thought would work, or they thought would work. And admittedly, I think some of the processes that were put forward at the beginning were not necessarily the most important processes that those managers were in charge of, but they wanted to just kind of try this out and do kind of a light touch on Elms. And now we're kind of on our second iteration of this, and a lot of the managers are like, well, now we know how this works, and we want to change the scope of our processes to capture some of the more important work that hadn't been captured in some of the earlier teams. Linda, would you characterize that similarly?
Yes, yeah, Cheryl. And I think, again, we go back to our lean training of, work with the willing. Don't try to talk people into that this is a good thing. Show them it's a good thing and show successes. Every month during our business review, we have one of our teams come in and talk about how well they've done with Elms. We do a different team every month, so all the managers can see how successful it is, you know, and we just, success begets success, and we just try to kind of keep things rolling that way.
It also, I just want to mention that for the managers in charge of a process, after a while, they realize that their life is so much easier as a manager to be able to look at a board and know where all their work is of their staff members, especially in this remote environment. So I think that, you know, there has been some aha moments once the managers got on board that their role as a manager has been improved tremendously through this.
Thanks, you guys. We have a question also from Paz Terrio Berjano, another one. Who participates in the 15-minute weekly huddles?
So it's usually everyone on the process team. And some teams are big. I mean, some teams are 20 people and some teams are small. You know, like our contracts team is only really 4 people. That's who processes all of our purchase requests. So it's everyone, you try to get everyone who's involved in the process.
Okay, I'm going to unmute Paz and see if they have a follow-up question. So you are self-muted now. If you want to add anything. Go ahead.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. The next question is from Marie-Eve Jacques. Great presentation. Is there a resource, i.e. a website, that explains each step in writing, including each part of the flow board, performance board, etc.?
Well, I can send you our training slides, and that goes into a lot more detail on each piece. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, let me see if Marie has any follow-up questions. Marie, go ahead, you're unmuted.
Thank you.
No follow-up?
No follow-up, all set. Thank you.
Yeah, Marie,
Okay.
if you want to just send me an email, I'll send you the slides that we actually use to train people. You know, I didn't want to go into too much detail here, but those really go into detail. That's like a 6-hour training, so there's a lot of material there, and I think that would probably be what you're looking for.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, we have a question from Alicia Carr. Is there a time frame associated with the project we can ask staff? Example, when we want to get projects, but staff want to know how much time they will need to put in and for how long, same as lean projects.
Yeah, so the initial deployment is about a 6-hour training. And then after that, you know, it's really your 15-minute huddle every week. And the time to update the board and stuff is, especially now that we do it virtually, it's pretty negligible because it's work that you're doing anyways. So it's, you know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes a week to update the board. So it's not, the initial deployment is a big commitment of time for the training, but once you're done with that, it's not much of a time commitment.
So Alicia followed up with 6 hours. How have you divided it?
We found the best way to do it is 2 hours a day because, you know, more than that, especially doing it virtually, is really difficult to pay attention for more than 2 hours. So like 2 hours a day for 3 days, or, you know, maybe schedule 2 hours a day for 4 days in case you need extra time. Sometimes the process, the SIPOC, doesn't go quickly. It sometimes takes more time than we would think. And we also try to do pre-work. We try to have the process, the SIPOC somewhat done ahead of time, so we just have some kind of idea of where the process begins and ends. Kind of like doing a Kaizen event, you know, you want to talk to people ahead of time and kind of figure out where this process is going to begin, where it's going to end. So when you go into the training, you have a pretty good idea of what you're dealing with. So you might want to schedule like 4 days, 2 hours each, and then hopefully not use the last 2 hours.
I'm going to try to unmute Alicia and see if she has a follow-up. Go ahead, Alicia. You're unmuted if you have audio. Alicia? She says, thank you. I will also email to request your training information. No additional questions. Her microphone is not working. Okay.
Great,
So-
yeah.
The follow-up. So Linda, I had a question as I was listening to you. So do you guys, you focus a lot on keeping tasks on time and trying to figure out where the bottlenecks are or where the delays are and then addressing those issues. How do you feel, or have you any measures or ways of evaluating the impact that sometimes more sort of emphasis on timeliness might have on the quality of the products that you guys are doing, either your reports or your permits or your grant I don't know, whatever, materials you're working on? Is there any sort of qualitative way you're evaluating to make sure that you're keeping up the quality of the materials and people are still actually, performing at a high level as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Terry. And again, that question comes up all the time with Lean Kaizen events as well. And other people might want to chime in who have dealt with this. But generally, we find that things are done. They might not even be done quicker using Elms, but they're done with better quality because you have a team working on things. And we also have, outside checks on that, checks and balances. We want to get our NIPD's permits out the door, but if they go out the door and then they're not done well, they'll get challenged in court. So that will end up taking a lot more time. So, the emphasis isn't just on time, it's also on quality. And our metrics, the things that we're trying to get better at, can be time or they can be quality. A lot of our issues are with rework. And Cheryl tells a great story about a team she was working with. Our IT purchasing process, and the IT people, every time they sent a purchase request to contracts, it came back because it wasn't filled out properly every single time. So by working together, they're able to figure out, how to fill these things out properly so the contracts people can process them correctly the first time. So it's not just time, it's also quality that we're looking at all the time in these processes. We're not just trying to do things faster for the sake of doing it faster. We're trying to, do things so that they, sometimes, like, we had one report that we would write that took them so long to write the report that they never ended up sending it out because it was so out of date by the time they got it finished. And this went on like year after year after year, and that, that's not unusual. Sometimes we have other things that just don't get out the door because they're so dated. And by putting it into an Elms process and tracking it and making sure the steps got done, it was able to get done in a timely manner and sent out the door. So all that time that people were writing this report and never sending it out, that was all wasted time and effort. So I think, in what I've seen, the quality improves as well as the timeliness. And another example is like our brownfield success stories. Brownfield success stories are really important because we spend a lot of money on brownfields and we want to get the story out that it's taxpayer money well spent. And they were having a really hard time getting these done because, again, no one was focusing on them. The group was from all different parts of the region. They didn't work together well. They didn't communicate well, and the brownfield stories were just not getting done. By working together, they were able to create a template that all the stories go into, so they all look alike. They were able to create a map so that you can click on a link and see a map of where all our brownfield sites are. All these things come out of focusing on the work. So I feel that it improves the quality. But
thanks, Linda. I don't know, Cheryl, you want to add anything? You're self-muted.
No, I think Linda covered that really well.
Okay. So we have a question from Paz. Does EPA capture the voice of the customer? If so, how? How does it consider in Lean and ALMS?
Yeah, so one of the things we do in our SIPOC is put down who the customer is for each step of the process. So hopefully we're making sure that we do capture the voice of the customer in that. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more if that doesn't answer your question.
Let me see, Paz, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's good to know who is, but what is what they have to say to us, to our processes? How do we capture what our customers will have to tell us? So for each single process, it will be different customers, can be external, can be internal, but that's EPA in its Lean and ELMS system, look for that, process that information and captures to have it in mind how to improve the processes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We mostly, with these processes, we're mostly focused on internal customers. So the internal customers are generally part of the process, and so they're at the huddles every week. So that, so we're able to communicate that way. And like with our Superfund billing process, the customer is our finance people. They need the right information so that they can send out the bills. So the finance people are now in the huddle every week. They're talking together and they're figuring things out, and they're saying, well, I need to be notified of this, and I will notify you of that, and we need to set up a system to do this, and so there's this constant weekly check-in with our customers, but it's with our internal customers.
Paz, did you have a follow-up to that?
Thank you.
I think, one of the next steps on our journey that we would hope to take is to do more lean management system projects with our states, and certainly our states are a huge customer for EPA. We would like to involve states, especially now that we can do everything virtually. I mean, we were, when we first started this, our manager who was running it, Henry Darwin, insisted that it had to be paper on the walls, insisted. And we would constantly get the question as to why can't we do this on an Excel spreadsheet? Why can't we do this on our computers? And it was like, no, it can't be stuck on people's computer. It has to be up on the wall. But since we've been forced to go virtually, we found out that the virtual way of doing this works so much better. We have people out in the field, we have people in our lab, and we used to have to like hold up a laptop and try and show them a picture of the flow board. I mean, it was really difficult. So they could participate. Now we can all jump on Microsoft Teams and we can all see at any time, what's going on with the process. So it's so much better. And I think that will also help us to work with our states. I know, Cheryl, you might want to talk about your institutional controls group. Cheryl's been doing a project with the state of Massachusetts that's been really successful.
Sure. So we have worked with the state Mass DEP on institutional controls and Superfund, and that's always been historically a very, very difficult process. And just getting the process steps down with the state, that everybody's been doing this work for their whole career, it seemed like, and nobody had the same idea of what the process steps were. Everybody was doing the same work in a different way. And so just getting the SIPOC done and getting that process done all together in a collaborative way has improved the communication between EPA and the state a lot. It's really, really helped move things along in that case. And I think we'd really like to see more of that, because the states are our partners in pretty much everything we do. So it would be nice to integrate some of the states into processes where that's a big proponent.
So a follow-up comment from Nicole Lugley, and in a second I'll unmute Nicole and she can maybe elaborate on this. Just before COVID broke out, Linda and Cheryl visited Connecticut Deep to train 4 teams. It was super. We now need to get back on track with those teams virtually. We would love to have Linda and Cheryl, quote, back, I assume that means back virtually to Connecticut to regroup with our teams. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. So Nicole, I'm gonna see, well, I don't see you anymore. Maybe. So if you guys want to elaborate any more on this idea of working with the states, since that's who's on this webinar by and large, are folks from states. And by the way, we have, oh, here's Nicole. Go ahead, Nicole, you're self-muted.
Oh,
Yep.
Hey there. Hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
Oh, okay. Hi there. Yes, thank you so much. That's what I wanted everyone to know. We're talking about different states that we did appreciate. I mean, so much, Linda and Cheryl, the training that you provided to DEEP. And those were strange times as everything was just breaking out and we were hearing news. And I have to say, you know, I've been meaning to reach back out to you. So I can't stress enough how fantastic this training has been. And just very excited to learn about how to use Teams, because we did the same thing. See, Connecticut Deep, we totally unveiled the Office, you know, the Teams Microsoft tool, and it like as COVID, so all of us teleworking. And so there's so much to learn from you. And I think some of these teams, it would be great, you're saying, if you're willing to do, you know, a check-in with the team to do something virtually. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes, Nicole, I've been meaning to reach out to you and make the offer to get those teams up and running virtually and see what we could do to keep the momentum going, because I think those teams were really excited about the work and had really put a lot into the training. So I don't want to lose all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and thank you. And to some degree, they definitely have continued progress, but I just think that having, like, honing in the way you're using the tools and the products, since we especially have Microsoft and we can do this, and to kind of use some of your templates that you have, that would be great. Thanks.
Nicole. I'm going to try to unmute Eric one more time. He still has his hand up. Eric, you're self-muted. Go ahead if you want to say something. Eric Beck. Okay, I guess not. So those are all the questions and comments that we received, you know, for you, Linda. I think this issue of working on some of these projects with the states is an important one. And I wanted to sort of pick up on that and mention to folks at the beginning of Linda's presentation, she talked about our regional work group. So we have this, it's now called Lean Practitioners Work Group. Maybe we should change the name to something like Performance Improvement Practitioners Work Group, PIP, that would be something like that as an acronym. But in any case, it's a group that's been meeting for many years, and we meet probably 3 times a year, maybe, usually, sometimes more. We have had webinars in the past where we've highlighted some lean events, particularly lean events that involve both EPA and either one or more states. And I guess I'm interested whether, you know, you want to continue some of this conversation about coordination with the states and doing some ELMS activities with states through that work group, Linda, and, you know, if so, when we might want to try to reconvene that group to sort of take up this conversation.
Yeah, I think we do, Terry. I think we see that as kind of our next step. I know Deb Zaro is really interested in doing that, especially for the states that have Microsoft Teams. It shouldn't be difficult. So I'm not sure when our next meeting is scheduled for, but we usually have them quarterly, so maybe we can talk about it then. I will send you the planner and also our the planner document for flow boards, and also our performance board template. So with those two pieces, people should be able to really even get started. But at least you'll have those available. And then we can talk about this more, I guess, on our next work group meeting.
Kate Moran says, yes, please. So I think she's thinking of responding to your offer to share things. Cheryl Rosner, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yes. So I've been a group called the E-Enterprise State EPA work group, and there's regional representative. I mean, there's representatives from the states that are interested in working on E-Enterprise, and there's a lot of overlap between those two groups. So I just we had that group in person last September come into EPA's Boston office, and we did a half day of an Elms tour, and I think every state was there except for Vermont. So I just want to make sure there's no confusion, that maybe we can kind of merge some of these activities together so that it's not redundant and we're capturing all the people that are interested.
Yeah, Cheryl, maybe we should all follow up, the three of us or four of us, whatever, and have that conversation. And speaking of Vermont, John Sears, who's with Vermont DEC, says Vermont would definitely be interested in working more with EPA on CI. I assume that's kind of process improvement. Alicia Carr says, can we be added to the work group or get updates? If you want to be added to the work group, Alicia, send me an email at tgoldberg@newmoa.org, and I will add you to the work group. And Cheryl and Linda, I'm happy to sort of talk about the schedule for our next work group. If you meeting, we don't have one scheduled yet. The last one we had, I think, was in, if I'm not mistaken, it was in July. So we'll do for one this fall. So, maybe sort of, I don't know, if planning something jointly, Cheryl, with your E-Enterprise group makes sense, or maybe that's a separate conversation. Anyway, can we follow up and sort of figure this out?
Yes, that
Yeah.
sounds great, Terry.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Linda and I, we work together on everything. We're partners in this activity, this whole thing. So there's no issue about us having different roles here.
Okay, great. Alicia Carr says, I didn't capture the current name. Is this a team or on MS Teams? I'm not sure what she's referring to. Alicia, I'm going to unmute you, see what you want to, if you want to clarify that. Go ahead. Alicia? Oh, she may not have the audio going. I'll repeat my email. That's what she's asked for. It's tgoldberg@newmoa.org. So it's tgoldberg@newmoa.org. John Sears corrects me with my misinterpretation of the abbreviation. CI stands for continuous improvement. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. And is John the one who's the expert on Microsoft Teams and has done a lot of training?
Yes, John, you can, if you want to say something in the last few minutes, I've unmuted you. Go ahead, you're self-muted. Go ahead, John.
Sure. So we've, in the state of Vermont, we've pretty much adopted Teams stuff, and we've done a lot of work with Teams. So I'm definitely excited to do more Teams work, incorporating it into the lean or continuous improvement side of things. So, and I'd be happy to work with EPA and work on some more of that.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'd be happy to have your Teams expertise.
Yeah, during our last work group call in July, we sort of had John spontaneously break out into some Teams, Microsoft Teams training. And I think people really appreciated how he was just able to very easily sort of transition into that and kind of share his knowledge of that program and some of the ways they're using it in Vermont. Linda or Cheryl, do you guys have any closing the only other thing I want to ask is that we did have people on this webinar from New Jersey and New York. And do you guys know who the Region 2 contacts are and how they could reach them?
Yes, Region 2 is Kevin Hurley. And I'd be happy to send you his email if you shoot me an email. And Region 3 is Allison Nye. And again, shoot me an email. I'll put you in touch with them. And we can also put you in touch with our headquarters people as well.
Yeah, I don't think we have any participants from Region 3 states, just Regions 1 and 2. Well, that's great. So just for the folks from the Region 2 states who might want to be in touch with their Region 2 counterparts and find out more about what Region 2 is doing with this. And we do have folks from Region 2 on our EPA Region 2 on our work group. So if anyone on today's webinar who's still on the webinar wants to join our work group, email me and I will add you to our email list, and then you'll get notices about our calls and our webinars or anything else we're doing. We also do, as a work group, have a SharePoint site that Linda is sort of moderates and has helped to set up and manages. It's not through NUMOA, it's through EPA Region 1. And so that's a way of sharing information and files. So thank you, Linda. Thanks for today's webinar. This was terrific, and I think everybody appreciated it. And I hope everybody stays healthy and safe and enjoys the rest of your summer. Bye-bye.